Imagine building this massive multi-million-dollar digital fortress.
Right.
You've got biometric scanners, you deploy these local 5G signal jammers, and you hire like an absolute army of guards to just stand outside the vault.
Right. It looks totally impenetrable.
Exactly. It seems completely locked down. But then somebody just walks right out the front door with the gold. And how do they do it? Because instead of, trying to hack the laser grid or whatever, they just slipped a local delivery driver a $20 bribe and tossed the treasure into the back of a rented e-rickshaw.
Which is, it's the ultimate mismatch in security design. You can engineer the most sophisticated defenses in the world at the final destination, but if you leave a flimsy screen door propped open at the loading dock, well, the whole fortress is worthless.
Yeah, exactly. So welcome to another deep dive. If you're joining us today, you are the learner. You're someone who wants to look past the flashy breaking news alerts and really understand the hidden mechanics of how complex systems actually work. Or, in the case of today's investigation, how they spectacularly fall apart.
And this one really fell apart.
Oh, completely. We have a massive stack of sources to go through today. We're pulling from investigative journalism reports, leaked timelines, official Central Bureau of Investigation briefings, and educational policy documents. Our mission today is to piece together the mechanics of a scandal that has just brought India's entire education system to a grinding halt. We're talking about the unprecedented cancellation of the NEET UG 2026 medical entrance exam.
Yeah, and the scale of this logistical operation and the failure that followed is honestly difficult to conceptualize. Just to give you some context, this is a highly competitive, singular gateway to becoming a doctor in India.
It's the big one.
The absolute biggest. On May 3rd, over 2.2 million aspirants sat for this test.
Wow.
Yeah. 2.2 million. They took it across 551 cities in India, 14 international cities, and at over 5,432 individual testing centers.
See, if you've ever had to take a high-stakes standardized test or, if you manage data security or supply chains in your own profession, you know how fragile centralized systems can be? Like, one compromised node can just infect the entire network.
Oh, absolutely.
And this test was compromised so thoroughly that the government had to initiate a nationwide cancellation. They just handed the entire mess over to federal investigators. So today, we're exploring how a system that was designed to be this impenetrable digital and physical fortress failed on, well, both high-tech and incredibly low-tech fronts.
Right. And to map out a failure of this magnitude, we really have to bypass the endpoint. Like, we have to look past the student sitting in the exam halls and trace the digital footprint all the way back to its origin.
Because you don't leak an exam to millions of people on the actual day of the test.
Exactly. You have to intercept it much, much earlier in the supply chain.
So, our sources, the investigative reports, they point to the very first digital copy of the leaked paper being prepared in Nashik, Maharashtra. And the authorities suspect it was siphoned directly from a printing press before it was even boxed up. But here is where it gets really interesting to me. Usually, when we think of a document leak, we picture like a rogue employee hurriedly snapping photos with their smartphone.
The classic spy movie trope.
Right, but the culprits deliberately avoided mobile phones.
Which is smart. Using a mobile phone camera is a massive amateur liability for a syndicate operating at this tier.
Because of the metadata.
Exactly. Modern smartphones embed hidden metadata into every single photo. You get precise timestamps, the camera model, GPS coordinates,
Right.
It's all there. On top of that, taking dozens of photos of a thick booklet is just a really clumsy process.
Right, you're flipping pages, trying not to get caught.
Yeah, and you risk capturing a glare from the overhead lights, or maybe a blurry page. And that makes the stolen asset basically useless to a high-paying buyer. So instead, the sources reveal they used high-definition portable scanners.
Which yields this perfectly flat, pristine PDF document. It literally looks like an official digital release rather than, stolen contraband.
Right. But capturing that perfect scan is really only step one. The real hurdle is transmitting that massive, highly sensitive file across the country without triggering any cybersecurity algorithms or detecting, like, an anomaly.
Which is where the shadow server comes in, right?
Yes. To solve this transmission issue, the syndicate routed their traffic through a shadow server based in Nashik.
Okay, a shadow server sounds like a term pulled straight from a cyberpunk novel. What does that actually look like in practice, like physically?
Basically, a shadow server is an unlisted, hidden digital middleman. In this specific instance, the sources indicate it was running on a leased line belonging to a small, totally unassuming IT startup.
What's a lease line?
So a leased line is a dedicated private fiber optic connection directly from an internet service provider. Unlike your standard consumer internet, which is, heavily monitored and the speeds fluctuate, a leased line provides this massive, secure, and often unthrottled data pipe.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. So by piggybacking on this legitimate-looking startup's infrastructure, the culprits completely masked their IP addresses. When government cyber monitors are scanning for suspicious traffic around the exam's official servers, they completely overlook a small corporate data transfer happening in a random IT company hundreds of miles away.
That is wild. So from that shadow server in Nashik, this pristine PDF begins its journey. And the timeline shows it moving to Haryana, reportedly reaching a doctor in Gurugram. Then it travels to Jaipur, and finally it hits Sikar in Rajasthan. And Sikar is a critical node in this story, right? Because it operates as this massive coaching hub.
Yeah, it's huge.
It's practically the Silicon Valley of standardized test prep in India. So from Sikar, the file just explodes pan-India. It reaches places as far apart as Jammu and Kashmir, Bihar, and Kerala.
Yeah, the file behaves almost like a highly optimized digital virus, just looking for the most efficient distribution vectors. And in the ecosystem of Indian education, those vectors are the sprawling networks of private coaching academies.
See, I look at this timeline and it completely contradicts the public narrative we were fed. The National Testing Agency, the NTA, the ones who run this exam, they spent months boasting about their security architecture.
Sure, they were very proud of it.
Right. They deployed AI-assisted CCTV surveillance. They installed localized 5G jammers at all the centers, required biometric verification for every student, and placed over 6,000 observers on the ground. Yet, if the master document is quietly scanned at a printing press and routed through a shadow server before the physical papers are even loaded onto a transport truck, I mean, isn't all of that expensive downstream security nothing but elaborate theater?
It is the literal definition of security theater. The NTA engineered this incredibly robust defense, but they concentrated all their resources on the endpoint. They viewed the 17-year-old student sitting at a desk as the primary threat vector.
Right, they were looking at the wrong problem.
Exactly. They prepared for tactical, localized cheating, someone smuggling in a Bluetooth earpiece or an imposter trying to take the test for a paying client.
So they spent millions guarding against individual bad actors, but completely missed the systemic vulnerability right at the source. It's like, if the original blueprints are quietly copied from the architect's safe, adding 100 extra security guards to the construction site accomplishes absolutely nothing.
That's a perfect way to put it. And the syndicate understood this blind spot perfectly. Once they possessed that master blueprint, the next logistical nightmare was distribution. How do you disseminate a highly illegal, top-secret national document to thousands of paying customers without triggering automated internet filters or, alerting law enforcement?
You hide it in plain sight.
Exactly.
The sources detail how these leaked papers were actively circulated across networks under the guise of quote-unquote guest papers.
It is such a brilliant, insidious tactic. They package the stolen test as an incredibly accurate practice exam. In Sikar, certain coaching centers actually had specific students sit down and prep using these exact guest papers mere hours before the real exam.
Just hours before.
Yes. And the accuracy was terrifying. When the actual test commenced, all 90 biology questions matched the guest paper flawlessly.
All 90.
All 90. And 35 out of 46 chemistry questions were identical. Even the obscure grammatical quirks and punctuation, they were exact carbon copies.
It functions exactly like modern movie piracy. Like, bootleggers will upload a crystal clear ripped copy of a brand new blockbuster to a streaming site, but they'll title the video Fanfiction Recreation or Student Film Project.
Right, to fool the system.
Yeah. By mislabeling the asset, they bypass the automated copyright bots. And if a student is caught with the document beforehand, they have this built-in plausible deniability. They can just claim, oh, I bought a highly rated practice test online. I had no idea it was the real exam.
And the economics fueling this distribution are just staggering. The price for this leak fluctuated wildly depending on, your proximity to the exam date and the buyer's network connections. The sources show transactions ranging from 25,000 rupees to an unbelievable 40 lakh rupees.
To put that into a global perspective for you, 40 lakh rupees is roughly 48,000 US dollars.
It's massive.
We are talking about a sum that represents decades of savings for an average family in India, paid out for one entrance exam. And a significant portion of this microeconomy relied on a 400-member Telegram group. And this is the part that blows my mind. The group was literally named Private Mafia.
Not exactly subtle.
Not at all. Their public description was almost comical in its audacity. It literally read, in all caps, "This group made only for upload, leak exam paper. Don't forward any paper from this group to outside."
So the syndicates weren't even operating in the shadows anymore. They were running these open-air digital marketplaces. We also see the dark web playing a role in the initial wholesale distribution, too. Our sources parallel this to the UGC NET exam leak.
Right, another major national exam for university teachers that happened around the same time.
Exactly. In that instance, a paper was reportedly sold on the darknet for 6 lakh rupees, which is about $7,000.
So wait, someone buys the wholesale file on the dark web for $7,000 and then turns around and acts as a localized distributor, like reselling it on Telegram to hundreds of desperate students for maybe 5,000 to 10,000 rupees, so maybe $60 to $120 a pop?
That's the model. It's a highly structured franchise system.
Okay, but there is a massive logical gap here. If 140 out of 180 questions matched word for word, and there is a literal Telegram group called Private Mafia actively hawking the leak, how does the NTA remain completely oblivious until 4 days after the exam? Like on May 5th, a video of this exact Telegram group went viral, and the NTA released an official statement calling the video fake and threatened legal action against whoever posted it.
Yeah, they really doubled down.
They only retracted that threat on May 7th when the whistleblower evidence became mathematically undeniable. How do government authorities ignore an active public threat like that?
Honestly, it comes down to the psychology of information overload and the signal-to-noise ratio in the digital age. I mean, multiply the standard internet chaos by the sheer anxiety of 2.2 million students competing for just a fraction of available medical seats.
It's a pressure cooker.
Exactly. In the weeks leading up to the NEET exam, social media is absolutely saturated with millions of PDFs, YouTube tutorials, and Telegram posts, all claiming to possess the ultimate question bank or the guaranteed 100% leak.
Right, it's just an endless ocean of spam and grifters trying to fleece panicked teenagers.
Precisely. So from the perspective of the authorities, trying to isolate the single authentic leak among tens of thousands of fabricated scams is nearly impossible. Discerning the signal from the noise really only happens when the actual test is sitting on a desk and an investigator can physically cross-reference the two documents. The NTA likely dismissed that viral video because they deal with hundreds of similar fake extortion attempts every single testing cycle.
That makes sense, but it's still frustrating. Anyway, all of this digital smuggling via shadow servers and Telegram mafias requires a physical document to scan in the first place.
Right?
The digital footprint is only half the story.
Oh, definitely.
To see how the physical chain of custody completely broke down, we have to look at the logistical ground zero, and that is the Oasis School in Hazaribagh, Jharkhand.
The events in Hazaribagh perfectly illustrate this massive chasm between high-level policy planning and ground-level reality. The CBI first zeroed in on this specific location because a partially burnt piece of the question paper was discovered in Patna, which is a completely different city.
Yeah, a burnt scrap of paper with a roll number on it, 6136488. And investigators traced that specific ID back to a student assigned to the Oasis School in Hazaribagh. So the authorities interview the school's principal, Ehsan ul Haq, and the timeline he provides regarding the transportation of these highly sensitive national documents it's baffling.
It really is.
Okay.
According to the principal and the shipping manifests, the NTA outsourced the transportation of the exam boxes from the city of Ranchi to a private courier company, Blue Dart.
Okay.
When the shipment arrived in Hazaribagh, the boxes were simply unloaded onto the street outside the local courier office.
Wait, a top-secret national document determining the future of the medical field for an entire country is just sitting on a sidewalk. Why on earth is a government agency outsourcing the custody of this material to a standard commercial courier?
It fundamentally comes down to economics and profit margins. Our sources indicate the NTA collects roughly 300 crore rupees, which is about 36 million US dollars in student application fees.
That's a lot of money.
It is. However, their operating budget to actually conduct the exam nationwide is only around $24 million. When an agency attempts to run a logistical operation of this magnitude under strict budget constraints, they outsource to the lowest bidder. They aren't hiring armored vehicles with armed guards. They're using standard logistics networks.
Which leads to underpaid delivery drivers operating on super tight schedules. The driver who brought the boxes from Ranchi allegedly just refused to drive the final distance to the local State Bank of India branch, which is the designated secure holding facility.
Right. The driver's shift was likely over, or maybe the route wasn't optimized. So the courier company employees, lacking an official vehicle of their own, walked out to the street, flagged down an unaffiliated random e-rickshaw, loaded the national exam papers into the back, and had the driver take them to the bank.
No government officials.
No officials.
Yeah.
No GPS tracking. No security detail.
The juxtaposition is absurd. The NTA is touting AI surveillance and localized 5G jamming networks, while the actual physical exam papers are bouncing through traffic in the back of an untrackable e-rickshaw.
It's almost comical.
But the failure of the physical security architecture goes even deeper. Let's look at the actual morning of the exam.
Okay, so when the boxes are finally transported from the bank to the Oasis School, they're secured with these advanced digital locks. The NTA engineered these locks to remain dormant until precisely 1:15 p.m., at which point they are programmed to automatically beep and disengage, preventing any local officials from accessing the papers early.
See, that sounds like a foolproof mechanism.
You'd think so,
Yeah.
but at 1:15 p.m., the locks remain silent. They totally fail to open. The school administrators are standing there in a panic as the clock ticks down. They initiate an online call with NTA headquarters, and after several minutes of troubleshooting, the NTA officials instruct the school to manually cut the digital locks open using a hex blade that was conveniently provided in the shipment.
Wait, so if you engineer a state-of-the-art digital lock, but you intentionally ship a manual metal saw along with it just in case the technology fails, you have completely negated the purpose of the lock.
Exactly. You provided a physical backdoor.
Right. The system designers clearly knew the digital infrastructure was unreliable in Tier 2 cities, but by providing a physical bypass, they created a vulnerability that literally anyone could exploit. If someone had already tampered with that box during its e-rickshaw joyride, the digital lock failing provides the perfect cover story to cut the box open and destroy the evidence of the tampering.
And the CBI is heavily investigating that exact scenario right now. But the most damning evidence isn't even the broken lock. It is the internal packaging. Inside the metal box, there are 7 layers of protective materials. The final, innermost layer is a supposedly tamper-proof plastic envelope containing the paper. When forensic teams examined this specific envelope from the Oasis School, they discovered a precise, almost surgical cut at the very bottom.
A cut that had been meticulously glued back together.
Yeah. It was executed so cleanly that a stressed invigilator wouldn't even notice it in the rush of handing out papers. But under forensic scrutiny, it was obvious the envelope had been sliced, the document extracted for scanning, and then the plastic resealed.
This completely reframes how we think about structural integrity. I mean,
Yeah.
you can invest millions in biometric verification at the entrance of a testing facility, but if your supply chain relies on underpaid couriers, a random e-rickshaw, and a system architecture that provides a hacksaw to bypass its own digital locks, the entire national infrastructure collapses.
It really exposes the danger of asymmetrical security planning. If you do not secure the physical, low-tech transit nodes in smaller cities, the most sophisticated digital endpoints in the world cannot save the system.
So the dam finally broke, and the government could no longer deny the breach. And the fallout has been swift and, honestly, pretty chaotic. The NTA officially canceled the exam, issuing a statement that it was necessary to protect fairness, transparency, and credibility. And the CBI took jurisdiction and began making sweeping arrests.
We've seen major operations in Rajasthan resulting in 15 arrests, including individuals like Manish Yadav and Rakesh Manwari, who were suspected of anchoring the Sakar coaching center distribution networks.
Right.
In Maharashtra, the Nashik crime branch arrested a key suspect named Shubham Karnar, who is notably a BAM student, meaning he's actually pursuing a Bachelor of Ayurvedic Medicine. So we are seeing individuals already embedded within the medical education system, allegedly facilitating the corruption of that very system.
Wow. And the CBI has registered an FI, a First Information Report, which, for those who don't know, is the official police document that launches a criminal investigation in India. They are invoking criminal conspiracy, cheating, and utilizing the newly minted Public Examination Prevention of Unfair Means Act 2024.
Yeah, that's a fresh piece of legislation specifically drafted to dismantle these exact types of paper leak syndicates with much harsher penalties.
The legal response is aggressive, sure, but the logistical response is an absolute nightmare. The government mandated a re-exam within 7 to 10 days. The sheer administrative burden of resetting a secure testing environment for 2.2 million people in a single week is nearly impossible.
Yeah, and to mitigate the absolute chaos, the NTA announced students do not need to re-register. Their previous center allocations remain valid, and no new fees are required. In fact, the previous application fees are being refunded, which is a massive financial hit when you consider that $36 million revenue pool we talked about earlier.
Exactly. And politically, the reverberations are echoing across the entire country. Like, the Chief Minister of Tamil Nadu, Vijay, has leveraged this crisis to demand the total abolition of the NEET exam. And we're just reporting the facts here, not taking sides. But his stance is advocating for a return to a model where medical admissions are based strictly on Class 12 board marks. He argues that a centralized single point of failure exam is inherently vulnerable and inequitable.
Which really touches on an incredibly difficult ethical tension at the heart of standardized testing. Is it justifiable to cancel an exam for 2.2 million people because of a localized leak network operating in a few states like Rajasthan, Bihar, and Maharashtra?
The psychological toll of that decision is just immense. I mean, put yourself in the position of a 17-year-old student. You have studied 14 hours a day for 2 years, isolated yourself from your peers, taken the test, and performed brilliantly. Suddenly, the government tells you your defining academic achievement is void because a syndicate 1,000 miles away bought the answers on Telegram. It feels like collective punishment for the innocent.
It does. The counterargument from the NTA, though, is that systemic integrity must override individual fairness. In an exam where a single point can drop a student's rank by hundreds of positions, a leak that artificially inflates the scores of even a few thousand buyers completely destroys the merit curve.
Because it shifts everything.
Exactly. If even one unqualified candidate becomes a doctor through fraud, public trust in the entire medical profession is compromised.
Systemic integrity is ultimately what collapsed here. A multi-million-dollar national testing apparatus wasn't brought down by some sophisticated state-sponsored cyber attack. It was dismantled by a leased-line shadow server, a Telegram group operating in broad daylight, an outsourced courier, an e-rickshaw, and a bottle of glue.
It's wild when you say it all together like that.
It really is. As long as there are massive financial incentive, up to $48,000 per student, human nature will inevitably find a way to exploit the physical, low-tech gaps in a high-tech system.
It requires a fundamental rethinking of how security is distributed across a supply chain, rather than just, piling it onto the final destination.
Which leads me to a final, slightly terrifying thought for you, the listener, to mull over. We have spent this entire deep dive analyzing the mechanics of a real paper leak, but we are currently living through an explosion in generative AI and deepfake technology. What happens to the concept of standardized testing when malicious actors start generating fake leaked papers that perfectly mimic the formatting, watermarks, and syntax of the real thing?
Oh, that is the imminent frontier of this crisis.
Right. If a Telegram group can create enough public panic to force a government to cancel a national exam with a real leak today, what is stopping them from weaponizing fake leaks tomorrow? A syndicate could train an AI to generate a flawless PDF in 5 minutes, blast it across social media, and derail an entire national infrastructure without ever touching the actual physical test.
Authorities will no longer just be fighting physical supply chain breaches. They will be fighting an asymmetrical war of perception and digital reality.
Exactly. How can trust in any centralized institutions survive when reality itself only becomes verifiable after the damage is done? You can build the ultimate digital fortress, but it doesn't matter if the crowd outside is convinced the treasure has already been stolen. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. To you, the learner, keep questioning the systems around you, look for the open screen doors, and we'll catch you on the next one.